Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So the chapter 14 is titled The Modes of Material Nature. Of course, we all have some understanding. I think this is good summary of the content so that we are very clear about this topic. How these modes of material nature work and what are its impacts, how do we get out of the influence of it. So all these are the topics of this chapter. So the overall theme for this chapter is Krishna introduces a framework for analyzing how the material nature operates. So thereby we can get a better handle on how do we deal with this material nature. So this nature is this particular framework is called the modes of material nature. It has the chapter has 3 primary sections. The first 13 verses cover how the soul is conditioned by the modes. The soul is trapped. And so how is it trapped? Just 1 second. Hello. Yes. Actually, my daughter came to write it in the morning. I got her stop. Yeah, this morning. Thank you. Sorry. So broadly, it has 3 sections. First, it explains how the soul gets conditioned by the modes. And once it is conditioned, the soul is conditioned, what are the effects of conditioning by the modes? How the jiva gets influenced by the modes? And finally, the solution, which is to getting out of the modes. How do we transcend the modes? So these are the topics that are discussed in this. At any time, you can ask me a question if anything is unclear. Are you hearing some noise? I've just closed it. The topics are clear, right? How the soul is influenced, and once it influences, what are the effects of it? And finally, how do we transcend? So these are the detailed sections. Initially, I'm not going to discuss in depth of each of the sections here. The soul gets conditioned. So that is the first topic, in which first Lord again glorifies the knowledge that is presenting in this chapter. And secondly, how the soul's contact with matter happens. We are going to discuss in detail in the next slide. And finally, how the modes bind the soul. And what are the how do we identify these modes? And the second section has the effects. What are the long-term, short-term, and immediate effects? And how the passing away from this world is affected because of the modes one has lived in this life. Finally, the transcending of the modes. Okay, so the modes are like subtle forces that shape our interaction, our interaction with the matter, the soul's interaction or the consciousness interaction with the matter. So it's a force. It will shape the interaction. It determines the outcome in one sense. So that is modes. They are either, generally we hear about robes and glasses, right? If you wear, suppose you are wearing a red glass and watching everything around, you'll see everything is tinted in red color, right? So modes act in this way to change our perception of things. So in another comparison, modes are compared to ropes. Just like ropes pull us in various directions. Suppose somebody is tied with ropes and is pulled in various directions, right? His actions are totally determined by the force or the direction in which the ropes pull the person. So modes influence jiva in 2 ways. One is by influencing his perception, just like a glass, colored glass. So the way one receives the input, that is influenced, and the way one acts, right? So when you want to act, but because you are forced by certain rope that is tied to you, you act in a certain way. So in these two ways, our perception and perception in this world are both impacted by it. To understand a little more in depth, so first understand how we interact in this world in two ways, right? So first we receive the knowledge, we perceive the knowledge in this world through our senses. We acquire knowledge in the world, and secondly we act in the world, right? One is the input, the other is the output, right? So we acquire knowledge and we act in the world. So for this we have senses, right? So the Gnanendriyas help us acquire knowledge in this world, which are comprised of eyes, nose, ears, skin, and tongue. So we acquire knowledge from the world using these Gnanendriyas. And once you acquire, you act in this world through your Karmendriyas. So which are primarily hands, legs, or speech, or reproductory and excretory organs. So using which we act in this world. So the Gnanendriyas help us to perceive this world, and Karmendriyas help us to pursue actions in this world. Right? Now modes affect both these, both our perception and perception. Both of these are affected by the modes. Right? So they act like glasses when you perceive things of this world. Right? You try to acquire knowledge, but you have certain understanding, certain idea, and so you everybody sees the same thing, but everybody has their own perception. Right? We hear about that always. The reason the perception is different is because the modes act in each individual differently. Right? And similarly, once you acquire the knowledge, you saw something and you acted, and your actions also will differ based on the modes you are in, right? The perception. So just like the ropes, the modes will pull us in different directions. Is that clear so far? Any questions on up to now? So basically the modes act to influence our input as well as output, right? The Gnanendriyas, the actions of the Gnanendriyas and Karmendriyas. Right? So these modes in Sanskrit are termed as Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Sattva is mode of goodness. The Sat means actually existence, or you can say good existence. Rajas is mode of passion, characterized by hyperactivity. And Tamas is ignorance or inactive or lethargy, which can be sometimes very destructive also. If you are primarily influenced with Tamas, it's basically, it could be very destructive to you. So in general, people in this world, or everyone is influenced by all the modes, but primarily one mode influences at any time. Right? And we hear this word phrases like, some people make things happen, some people watch things happen, and some people wonder what has happened. Right? They'll never act. So what do you think is the first one? Anyone? Some people make things happen. Is this an indication of a person in the mode of, primarily in the mode of goodness?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you answering? Yeah. What is the first one? Are you all hearing me?
Yeah, Prabhu.
Okay. You can hear. Yeah, The first one is mode of
Passion, is it?
Passion, Prabhuji.
no, it is mode of goodness.
Is it getting things done, right?
Yeah, getting things done in the right way.
Doing the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can also say, yeah, you need to have some, mode of passion to execute, but primarily driven by make things happen means doing the right things. Some people watch things means they try to do, but they don't do it the right way. It's more in the mode of passion. Mode of passion is hyperactive. It doesn't mean that they do it the right way. Right? So they also pursue, but they don't do it the best way. And some people don't do it at all, and that is mode of ignorance. So the defining characteristic of a person in sattva is a reflection before action. Reflection before action means always thinks before he acts. That is, you can say, a person in mode of goodness. He doesn't succumb to immediate force whereby he acts. Right? The moment input comes, he just doesn't act. Right? That is also, as the saying goes, look before you leap. Before you jump, just see. Maybe you're jumping in a ditch that is far deep. You don't know. So look before you leap. Right? If you don't look, you may fall in a ditch and you will never get up. So the defining characteristic of a person in a rasas is action before reflection, right? Many of us have this experience where we just act and we wonder, why did we do that? So the slogan of Nike, the Nike shoes, they have the slogan, just do it, right? This is the ethos of today's world. Just do it. We have seen this everywhere, right? So that is a slogan that reflects the characteristic of a person in rajas. Right? The act before they think. And finally, when there is no reflection and no action, and simply delusion, that is signifies the mode of ignorance. The person in mode of ignorance, he doesn't think, neither he acts. He's just sluggish. He just stays there and doesn't act. So the lesson is, do not do unthinking, means don't, no reflection, or do overthinking, but instead act with some thought. Unthinking is mode of passion. Overthinking is analysis of analysis of paralysis, we say, right? So some people overthink and never act. Meanwhile, all the opportunities will go. That is kind of mode of ignorance. We should act with some thought. So these are the three modes. And just to give some examples here, all of us have some of these experiences, right? We do things and wonder why we did that. In the hindsight, that's really stupid and foolish. We consider, why did I even do that? Right? We all have that experience. So one of the universal insight in psychology is that we are not masters in our own house. What does that mean? We are not masters in our own house. So this is, psychology is a science that goes to study the patterns and behaviors of mind, how a person behaves. And one of the key theme is we are not masters in our own house. Meaning, many times the actions or thoughts that we pursue, they're neither initiated or controlled by us. Think about it. So many times the acts that we do are neither initiated nor controlled by us. Right? And sometimes we all have the experience of speaking words in different groups of people where we go and meet. We sometimes speak against the ethos and values we stand by, just to to be keep the company of the people around us. And we sometimes succumb to certain temptations which are completely against our ethos based on the circumstances we are in, and get deluded, right? It's because not we all understand that we are not masters in our own house. So, and so this particular inner complexity is very bewildering, that why people act in very no completely ununderstandable ways in this world, right? And different thinkers of this world, from the ancient times, so they have given different models on how do we actually model this kind of behavior by human beings. They act in things that in ways that they don't really desire to act, that are against their own ethos that they stand by. So this inner complexity is given thought by various thinkers all over the world, and they have given different models of understanding this particular complexity. And from our Vedic science, the modes of nature is the answer to this particular complexity. Okay? Now, think about the modes of nature, how it is trying to explain how the modes would influence our inputs as well as outputs, right? Our perception and our action, our perception in this world. So this particular concept that is given in Bhagavad Gita, and it is a time-honored model referred in various other scriptures as well. So this very well explains this particular behavior as to why people act in this way, as if by force, right? And yeah, so all the thought process that evolved in the medieval India actually accept this concept of modes as as a central theme of material existence. Right? So why we exist in this world, and how we are influenced by the forces within this world. Right? So this is the theme that explains why we do that way. Yeah. And we all have this experience that when we are functioning in some modes with some within some modes, we all have the experience that certain attitudes and emotions that become natural for us, right? You are in a different setting. Suppose you are in a discotheque. Certain attitude and emotions become your second nature. You are in a temple hall. You have certain attitude and emotion, right? Our attitudes and emotions vary according to the the surrounding influence that we are in, right? So basically, by understanding that, we can actually situate ourselves in places and where we are positively influenced, right? So another example to understand better how we get influenced by the modes. Suppose there is a movie theater. That's the best crowded place that we can easily think of. Say suppose all of us went to a movie theater. The doors are closed. It's all dark. Screen is still not yet projected. So it's and suddenly there is a fire in some corner, and the house is the whole hall is full. Immediately people would see the fire, and what do? Different people act differently. Not everybody acts the same, but eventually the causality is more than the fire itself. Generally, we all have the experience that there is going to be some stampede in such situation, and the causality, because of the fire, maybe just one or two people may get in the accident or get hospitalized, but because of this stampede, there is more untoward incidents that happen. Like more people get in the stampede. What do the people do? They, out of their you know desire to escape from the situation, they actually walk on each other. They don't care. Some people just get petrified. They don't do anything. Some people try to run over others. They don't care who the other person they're running over, whether they're dying or it doesn't matter for them. They have to escape themselves. And some people in this tragic situation also calmly think and try to see where there is a fire extinguisher and try to locate the exit doors, emergency exit doors, and try to help the situation. Right? So we see all kinds of, and they actually save some people. So people react differently based on the situation. That's what I'm trying to get to here. And we all are put into different situations like this all the time. And how we act in that situation determines the mode in which we are. Now, here in this case, so what is the person who is running over others and he doesn't care what mode is he in? He just wants to exit. Doesn't matter how many people get stampeded under his leg.
Passion. Passion or ignorance.
Yeah, that is primarily mode of passion. Yeah. And the people who get petrified, they get shocked and they may fall down there without even thinking what to do, right? So that is primarily in the mode of
Ignorance.
ignorance, yeah. And the people who try to, find a solution in that moment, they are actually acting with knowledge, right? So they're trying to, they know that, there will be some fire extinguishers because that is the uh, law of the land to maintain fire extinguishers. Let me see if I can help with the situation, right? So those are the people in the acting in the mode of goodness. Sometimes we see all the time. Um, you know, the other day, Josna Mataji and Chaitanya Sundar were there at our home, and they were explaining how when they ran into an accident, somebody was, has the presence of mind. He tried to save the situation, and I immediately remembered how the modes actually acted to help that particular individual to think properly at the time. So this is how modes influence all of us. Basically, that person saved the situation that when their car ran into an accident. It was a good incident to relate to how modes influence us. Yeah. So everyone is under the influence of the three modes, and different modes actually, again, within the date, within the our time window of 24 hours, different windows of time have different influence of the different modes. So all of us are primarily in the mode of goodness in the early hours of the day, right? So that is characterized by knowledge. So that is the best time to pursue any spiritual endeavors. And as soon as the clock ticks around 9 o'clock, predominantly the mode of passion kicks in. Even the material nature in itself exhibits that nature more. And that is characterized by hyperactivity. And as soon as evening sets in, mode of ignorance kicks in, which is characterized by inactivity, delusion, and fear. And also within each of us, all these modes, they interact and compete with each other. Suppose I was talking about the example of the cinema hall where people are stuck. Somebody is trying to save the situation, but he's also inside afraid. Oh, am I going to run into a problem because of the situation? So modes always compete with each other. This is another complex, another angle to the complexity of this, how these influences. So they interact and they compete with each other. For example, this competition always goes on. The morning time, all of us have these alarm clocks, right? At 4 o'clock, say you have an alarm. immediately as soon as the alarm rings, you get woken up and you would think, oh, I didn't have a good sleep last night. No, I should just ignore. So that is, and immediately another guilty feeling gets in you. Hey, this is the best time to chant. If I don't use this time for chanting, I will not be able to chant, have good rounds done for the day. So in this way, modes always compete with each other. This is another angle to it. Right. So in the daytime, mode of passion fixing, we already discussed. As soon as you start laptop, you know, mode of passion kicks in each of us. And the important thing is, if you want to grow spiritually, we need to keep pursuing to move ourselves to higher modes. If you are getting influenced by mode of ignorance, try to push yourself to mode of goodness. If you are getting influenced by mode of passion, try to push yourself towards the mode of goodness. And ultimately, when you are in the mode of goodness, you can pursue transcendence. Because you can have thoughts about Krishna. Without being in the mode of goodness, you cannot think about Krishna. So always pull your mind back to mode of goodness. Yeah. So to do that, our life and our choices that we make in our life, they have the highest impact on us. So that's the reason we have certain do's and don'ts in Krishna consciousness. All of us are aware of the 4 do's and the do's and 4 don'ts, the regulative principles. So why we do that? So that we know modes would compete within us. Within us, we are always influenced by the modes. And even in the science of psychology, they all accept this idea of, the concept that we are not the masters of our own house. We are influenced by some force always. And if you really want to have some kind of control on your own life, you need to make the choices in life that would actually direct you towards mode of goodness and ultimately towards mode of transcendence. Right? And another important characteristic is, the more you pursue a particular mode, the more you try to be in a particular mode, the more it influences to be in that mode. Right? For example, you try to develop a habit of checking your WhatsApp every 10 minutes. Or checking your WhatsApp every hour, for example, right? You will soon realize that you are checking your WhatsApp every 10 minutes. That's how it acts. The more you act in a way, the more it influences to act in that way. Especially lower modes are very big pulls. They're going to pull you more and more to do the same. That's exactly how we entangle. And all of us can relate to how, after spending an hour looking at your Facebook, you realize, oh my god, I lost an hour just by going to Facebook. Did you all have that experience, any of you, or you never had? Or watching some television show in the past before coming to Krishna consciousness?
Yes,
I
Prabhupada.
had that experience.
I also have that experience. It just gets sucked in, and especially these are like traps. They're like black holes, right? Black hole is a place where you get sucked in and you don't even realize all the habits, the bad habits that we have, they're like black holes, right? In the lower modes, they just suck in and you don't realize that you're in that mode. So this is another important thing to understand about modes. Modes compete with each other, and also they actually suck you in, right? Unless you realize and get out of it, they always try to pull you into that particular mode, especially the lower modes of passion and ignorance. But if you try to live in higher mode by practice, by by redirection. So we go to higher reality. Yeah. So yeah. So if someone tries to live in lower mode, the tendency to continue in that mode increases, and thus our destination is determined accordingly. Because there is greater ignorance, greater chance of being stuck in the material world. So if we, so this is the reason people get stuck in the material world, because they are, finally at the end of the day, they either get stuck in mode of passion or ignorance at the time of leaving the body, right? So both are, even mode of goodness is also like that. You have to transcend, otherwise you will continue to be in this material world. So ultimately, Krishna urges Arjuna, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhavajna, get out of these modes. Get out of all the Vedas also teach primarily, things that would keep you in the three modes of material nature. Get out of the three modes of material nature. So this is what Krishna urges Arjuna to. Okay? Now, how do we get out of the?
So just quick, one question. Why is Krishna advising Arjuna to get out of all the three modes of nature? Does it mean that even he should go beyond the Sattva Guna?
Yes, ultimately, because Sattva you will have while you are living in the material world. You will be under the influence of Sattva, but Sattva gives a platform to transcend to the material, to transcendental mode. Transcendental mode. What is transcendental mode? Means you are not influenced by the modes of material nature at all. What I mean by not being influenced by modes of material nature, right? Means your consciousness is primarily occupied by spiritual subjects or spiritual service. Right? Everything you do and act, everything is with the thought of Krishna consciousness. Right? As Prabhupada says, he was never forgot Krishna in every, all through his life. So that is called transcendental mode. A person in transcendental mode, everything that happens to him, he is able to relate in Krishna consciousness. Just like you look at how in the morning walks Prabhupada would speak, looking at various circumstances, he would always relate in a Krishna conscious way, right? We all have read some conversations of Srila Prabhupada during his morning walks. Right? There is so much depth in all his words because he is able to relate everything in Krishna conscious way. So that is transcendental. Is that answering your question? Or?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu. Yes, I got it.
Yeah. Mode of goodness means where there is abundance of good knowledge on what is, so there is some kind of discrimination on what is right, what is wrong. But again, that is not the best because there is a pleasure in being in the mode of goodness. That pleasure keeps one in the material world.
Right, Prabhu. Yeah, that clarifies.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, I have a question. So I'm trying to understand it holistically. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So the soul in its purest form is a subordinate to the absolute truth. And then when we have false ego, we fall into this material world. And these modes of material nature are there always. And we act differently. So each soul act differently according to the modes of material nature.
Mm-hmm.
So does it mean that the characters of the soul is causing, or the personality traits of the soul is causing us to act differently? Or what is this layer which is surrounding the soul, which is making us to act differently?
What is the, okay, yeah. So based on the karmic, the karmic debt each of us have, right? Based on our past actions, each of us have certain samskaras in the mind. Samskaras means the deposits of past experiences. These samskaras help us see things differently, or so the modes of nature. Actually, I'm going to explain that concept in how actually these modes we can relate to, with some simple examples. I'm going to come to the topic, how these actually, these things pop on us, right? When we discuss that, I think that will answer better, right? Okay, so let's wait for that.
Sure, Prabhu.
So before that, so the solution to get out of the modes, influence of the modes, is first thing is to observe the modes that are acting on us. Modes. Now, based on, if you look at our past actions, if you just go back and think about your past actions, you will have, you will have an idea on why you acted in a certain way in particular circumstances, and you can think how you acted by the influence of the modes. So first thing is to understand that you are being influenced by the modes of material nature, and observe the modes that are acting on us. How do you observe? Like, always there are thoughts that are flowing in our mind. First thing is, don't get sucked into your thoughts and travel with your thoughts. All of us have the habit of, you get a thought and you just pursue it like a black hole. You just get absorbed in it. Okay? So instead, when a thought comes to our mind, do not just travel with it, just observe first. Don't just, just have a filter to observe it first. Okay? Don't immediately act. That's why think before you act. That is the mode of goodness. Come to the platform of mode of goodness. Don't just immediately jump into act. Right? So now this will explain your question, Savan. So if you, how do we get out the modes? So if you compare ourselves with a computer, right? Not computer. So suppose our mind is like, software that keeps popping various notifications. Right? Mind keeps giving different ideas, right? All of us have this experience. So treat mind as like a software that keeps giving. Suppose you're working on something, suddenly an email pop-up comes, or some other app, or some WhatsApp notification, or something comes up, or a Gmail comes, whatever. So what happens when such a pop-up comes, right? Somebody in the mode of passion, he just doesn't, he just get distracted from what he's doing. He just goes and just pops up to see what is happening. What is that notification, right? Immediately just pursue that. Somebody in the mode of ignorance will just ignore. He doesn't even care. He just want to escape the situation. Somebody in the mode of goodness will just look at the title, or he will also look at the importance of what he is doing right now. If he thinks that he needs to focus on the current thing and this, he can always come back to this. But if it is coming from some important person, he will act based on the situation. Okay? So what is the difference between the person in the mode of goodness versus others? The person in mode of ignorance is trying to just avoid the situation. Person in the mode of passion is just jumping into the action. While the person in the mode of goodness, he is observing before he acts. Only if there is value, he will jump in. So just because notification popped up doesn't mean that we have to take notice and act right away. So this is what Krishna, when he says, observe first and think about the rationale and consequences of doing an action before you act. Yeah. And especially if suppose we have certain bad habit, or of watching certain, some following some games. Some people have some, they actually are passionate about, say, football, right? So immediately, as soon as they would subscribe to various YouTube channels about the football match, as soon as a pop-up comes, because their inner samskaras are towards pursuing that pleasure of watching that, as soon as that pop-up comes, what do? They just jump in. They don't even think what they're doing. That is the immediate thing they have to go and answer that. So that's exactly. So that's why So modes of nature is providing these opportunities for us. And based on our samskaras, we are actually pursuing things in this world, right? So these pop-ups are like black holes. They would, the material nature provides these opportunities to suck our consciousness in various ways, especially in the mode of passion and ignorance. Okay? That's exactly how we get sucked in. And what is the way out of it? Krishna says the way out of the black hole is to be attached to him. Why? How does that happen? Right? So, you have a bad habit, for example. Now you want to get out of it. Saying no to your bad habit is a big challenge, right? Because you are so strongly attached to the pleasure. Instead of saying no to that particular addiction that you already have, you instead say, first thing is to observe that you understand, yeah, this is my habit, that's why it is influencing me right now. Instead, say yes to Krishna. Meaning, suppose you have habit of watching something. Instead of that, you watch some drama of Krishna consciousness or something that's more interesting. You allot time. Okay, I'm not going to watch this football match now. Instead, in the evening, I'm going to allot this time to watch my favorite drama in Krishna consciousness. That's the observation and redirection. You do something positive, right? Instead of saying no to mind to not do pursue certain thing, right? You got that input. Now, right? You want to act. Your modes are influencing the way you get input. It pulled your samskaras. Now you're trying to act by watching the video. Instead of that, you wait a moment and see what you can do in Krishna conscious way. You may want to chant. Immediately chant, you have a different influence. Your actions will be different. As soon as you are succumb to lower modes, chant the holy name. You can see how your modes that are influenced will change. That's why we say, chant and be happy, because you become sublime right away. The modes of nature that are influencing you at that moment would just give up that influence. The ropes would be loosened immediately, and you have a different experience right away. That's why all of us, have this experience. Whenever we are anxious, we immediately chant the holy name. Right? Whenever our family members are in trouble, immediately we chant for them. It is, one thing is to help them through our prayer. The other thing is it's going to reduce your own anxiety and stress that you are in, right? Or business, or any of these are always going to put us in lower modes. The suck in the black hole of lower modes. And as soon as we pursue Krishna consciousness through chanting or through hearing, that would pull us out of that lower modes. So the solution for this is to redirect our consciousness towards Krishna. Okay? Yeah, so this is what we discussed already. Whenever notifications pop up, instead of saying no to them, say yes to Krishna. So this determination to say yes to Krishna is the solution, Krishna says. Right? Yeah. This is very similar to vaccinating ourselves, right? So if you want to fight the virus in your body, what do? You don't, you want to vaccinate yourself so that you build the immunity, and the immunity will fight itself with the virus, right? Through vaccination or through right food habits, you develop the immunity, and the immunity will take care of fighting with the virus. So that is how we actually build Krishna consciousness over a period of time. We will strengthen. Yeah. So we will strengthen our Krishna consciousness so strong that we are able to eventually fight our bad habits. very strongly, right? Until then, there will be influence of these bad habits. Until we are fully Krishna conscious, there will be always the fight between the modes, right? As I said in the beginning, one of the characteristics of the modes is it also fight with each other. They try to suck in, they try to fight with each other. These are all important understand about the influence of the modes. So the ultimate good habit, what is the ultimate good habit? The ultimate good habit is the habit of practicing bhakti or Krishna consciousness. Why? Because it connects us. Who is the source of all goodness? We want to be stay in the goodness and in transcendental mode, and that is easily possible when we are under the influence of Krishna consciousness. That is the best good habit. Right? If you want to get away from any bad habit, the best good habit is to become more Krishna conscious. Right? Because it is not just the process of bhakti that we pursue, like through chanting or hearing or serving in the temple or direct devotion service that will help us. It is also the power and mercy of the personality of Krishna which will help us. It is not just the process, it's not just the habit of Krishna consciousness. The personality of Krishna, who also gives us the inner strength, the power, and his mercy that acts upon us to actually fight against our bad habits. So, Bhagavad Gita 14:26 is a very famous verse. We can all read together. You can unmute yourself. Mam chayo avyabhicharena
Mam chayo avyabhicharena
bhakti yogena sevate
bhakti yogena sevate
sagunan samati chaitan
sagunan samati
brahma bhut bhuyaya kalpate.
brahma bhujaya.
Can one of you read?
One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman.
See, this is the essence of the entire chapter. One who engages in full devotion service, unfailing in all circumstances. What does it mean? Unfailing in all circumstances means whether you are working, cooking, everything you pursue, always have Krishna in the background, in your consciousness. The easiest way is to chant before you start any work, right? And also, time and again, whenever you are in, especially it is easy, as soon as you are in anxiety or some influence of lower modes like stress or depression, immediately chant the holy name and see the influence of it. Unfailing in all circumstances, this is the key, right? This is the solution that Krishna gives. As soon as you engage in devotion service, in all circumstances, you would overcome the modes and actually comes to the level of Brahman or transcendence. This is a summary of the chapter actually. And then finally he says one more interesting verse, right? Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya yasya amritasya yasya sasvatasya dharmasya sukhasya. I am the basis of impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. Krishna here clarifies, he is even beyond Brahman. He is the source of Brahman. This is one verse that very clearly clarifies that Krishna is the source of Brahman. Brahman is not the source of Krishna. As many impersonalists have, the understanding that, they all accept Krishna is transcendental, Brahman is transcendental, but the question is, who is the source of whom? The impersonalists think Krishna is coming from Brahma. And bhakti yogis are people of bhakti yoga. They think that they say that Krishna is the source of Brahma, but here clearly it says Krishna is the source. Yeah. So just become unflinchingly and undeviatingly devoted to me to transcend the modes. And all of us will have challenges as we start practicing devotion service. Over the period of time, we'll learn how to overcome, how to use this tool of devotion service to overcome the lower modes. All of us have, millions of lives of karmic background. And over the period of time, we have these vasanas, different desires in different circumstances, because material nature will keep us in different circumstances time and again, right? Time to time. It's not that you can always stay in the temple and be always Krishna conscious. It doesn't work that way. While living in the material world, you will be put in different circumstances. And all the urges that are residing in you over lifetimes of accumulation, these urges will have some surges. Surges meaning jump up. And it is quite possible that they can overpower us time into time. And if our intention to pursue devotion path is fixed, over time, these sudden surges will actually flatten out, and we can have a better handle on the urges and the modes, and we can ultimately influence that. We can get a handle on the influence of the modes of nature upon us. So practicing bhakti yoga is the ultimate solution. So I think this we already discussed. Modes act like pop-up notifications. This material world presents us with various experiences and circumstances, and on the screen of mind, these pop-ups will keep on coming up. And if you choose a pop-up, what happens? Our screen just gets occupied by it. As soon as you choose a particular thought, your mind is filled with that thought, isn't it? That's how it works. And because you just sucked into it, it's very difficult to come out. So before you suck in itself, you have to think where you are, what you are pursuing. That's why, think before you leap. That is the key. And if you have, you're working and then you got this pop-up, but you have this focus on the higher positive work, you will not be tempted, right? This is what we learn from the story of Hanuman pursuing Mother Sita, right? While he was taking the leap to Lanka, so many things will influence him to actually, allure him in different ways, but he is single-mindedly focused. So similarly, we all have to have the same kind of focus in life so that we actually can ultimately achieve perfection in life, and we don't die in lower modes and come back to the material world again. Yeah, I think we are done. I didn't get a chance to make good PPTs with pictures today, but it is what it is here today. Any questions? Now we can discuss.
So, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, one question. So, if we transcend the modes, that means we never act in either goodness, passion, or ignorance, right, Prabhuji?
Yes, no.
We always are in the transcendental goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if we are in transcendental goodness, can people exist in transcendental goodness? Because without mode of ignorance, we can't sleep, right?
Oh, that's a good question. So how do we know?
Is that possible to do while we are in this body?
Yeah, it's not that if somebody is sleeping, he is in the mode of ignorance always.
Hmm.
Yeah, for example, even like advanced devotees, they also sleep, but that is an activity. Before sleep, they actually, their understanding is, I'm going to give my body some rest so that I can wake up in the morning to actually engage in your service, Krishna. So that's how with their prayer they go to sleep. So that's an activity to actually regenerate the body so that they can engage their body in the service of Krishna. So if you have that kind of mindset,
Hmm.
then it is just because the body needs maintenance in the material world. That act of sleeping is not actually an act of mode of ignorance. Somebody tries to read something before sleep, and they think, and while sleeping also they hear something, or they think about Krishna before they sleep. With a prayerful mood, they sleep. That's not mode of ignorance. On the other hand, somebody just drinks wine and sleeps, and thinking about some bad thoughts. So that is completely in the mode of ignorance. So the act in itself doesn't determine
Hmm.
consciousness in which it is initiated, or the consciousness in which the person lives, it determines the mode in which he is. Because the body needs maintenance. In the material world, nobody can go without sleep. Even the most transcendental, even Prabhupada used to sleep 2 hours. Yeah? Because, and by the way, as the influence of transcendence increases, the bodily needs will also reduce.
Hmm. Hmm.
So he was healthy, he was 70 plus, still he was very sharp in his mind, as well as he was requiring very little sleep. And he was doing it for days on end, it goes for a long time.
Mhm.
For many years he was able to write so many books while without sleeping.
Wow. Hmm. Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you for clarifying, Prabhuji.
Very good. I hope this clarified very well about the modes, how they work, and what are the characteristics, and what is the solution out of it. Saran Prabhu, is your question now answered?
Yes, Prabhu. I got clarification, Prabhu.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? If not, you can all state one important lesson that you have taken away, or that really touched you, so that you can take away for your lifetime as a lesson. Now let's go one by one. Anand Mohan, Prabhuji, are you there? Yeah. Can each of you go?
Prabhuji, I think Anand is outside. He's having background noise.
Sure. Yeah, let's go. Jai Shri Mataji, you want to go?
Yes, Prabhuji. I think the question that I had got clarified about mode of ignorance. That was one learning for me in the class. And the main points that were that stuck to my mind were think before you act, observe, and observing just doesn't take you, is not the final step. It's just the initial step. So those are some of the key takeaways. And then the main thing is unfailing devotional service in all circumstances.
That is the solution out of the modes.
Yes. Yes, Prabhuji.
Observe and redirect.
Observe and redirect. Yeah.
Observe is the first step. Don't just jump in, just do it, don't do it. Instead, observe and then redirect your consciousness. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah, I think this probably I heard this same thing in a different way from you in the previous sessions. So there's the mode of goodness is think and act. Mode of passion is act and think.
Something.
And then the mode of ignorance is don't, no thinking, no action, I think.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for the recap, Prabhuji. And then I think Samarth was also listening a little bit, but I think this is a good one to that it's not that somehow you can overcome force of passion by yourself.
Yeah.
You inoculate by surrendering to the Lord or doing devotional service, and then the Lord will assist you.
Lord's power and mercy.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. One thing I liked or was interesting to know is modes of nature also compete with each other. As you said, morning one mode and then later. So that maybe the way it is put somehow touched my heart. Another thing practically that I would like to practice is whenever we know, like, we are getting sucked into some non-mode of goodness, immediately chant. It's not out of our effort but that we can come out of it, but at least by the power of holy name, that distraction will go away, and the power of we getting sucked into that other distractions will be less, and we'll at least try to come back to goodness. So that's something I'll try to practice, like chant whenever I know that I'm going or drifting away from the right thing.
Yeah, that's a very powerful tool to chant. At not just some people actually every hour they have every hour they just chant few names every hour, meaning from 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 10, 11, 12, just like that. That makes it that becomes like a habit, and when you do that, immediately before pursuing your actions, you actually chant the holy name, and as soon as you utter the name, the influence of modes of nature would go away from you. That's a very practical tip. Thank you for bringing that out, especially in times of anxiety and stress. You should definitely chant. Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Nalini Mataji.
One point which I think I need to follow, what I thought is how bad habits can be transformed into good habits. As you mentioned, like forcefully we can't do certain things. So with devotion, how it can be transformed.
Yep.
And you mentioned that ultimate good habit is bhakti. So how can we overcome those bad habits? That one I really want to follow.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So it gives a framework on how we can see what is happening in our life, moment to moment. So these concepts are very powerful. Without understanding this, if we just pursue Krishna consciousness, of course it will have its effect, but without this foundational understanding, how my inputs are getting affected, how my outputs, the way I'm acting in this world are getting influenced by these modes, and how these modes are like ropes, and how they perceive, they change my perception. If we don't understand these concepts, it's very difficult to really, hook on to Krishna consciousness with that faith. That faith develops in Krishna consciousness. When you chant, you can clearly see that you're not into the intention. This is happening. Now, when you observe this, it is because I'm now out of stress because I'm not under the influence of modes, and that I could do because I'm able to chant. I did chanting. So now you can see how this knowledge is so perfect that Krishna has this framework of understanding how the material nature works is the best understanding that we can have. And not only that understanding, we also have a solution. So that, what more can you ask for? Right? So you would be fascinated, how this Gita is such a wisdom that it has the perfect solution, perfect description and framework to understand the problem, whatnot. Thank you, Madhu. Navadvip Prabhu. Navadvip Nandadeva.
Krishna Prabhu. What I learned today, and this is something which is more of an eye-opener, especially more on the professional front, is the statement you gave. We are not masters in our own house.
Yeah.
Why people act in an ununderstandable way, then why different people act differently, why they work against their own ethos. So this is something which all of us, we see in our corporate life. But today you summed it up nicely. I could relate to all this, and whatever we see when we are dealing with others, it's all primarily because of the different modes which are acting on them. So that really helped me a lot. The other point, as I also learned from other God brothers and God sisters here, is one is their own understanding, what they feel. So all that is very helpful. Plus, there are 3 points which really caught my attention. One is observing our thoughts. I think that is something which I should personally cultivate. Whenever I get into thoughts, I feel I should try and observe, control those thoughts, redirect that to anything which is around Krishna consciousness. And finally, the only habit to cultivate is the habit of bhakti. So these are some of the things which I learned today in this class.
I think you very well summarized everything, actually. That's like summary of the class. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, this is the best framework to understand how we act in this world.
So, and it is so amazing, Prabhuji, for everything, how chanting and performing devotional service is the answer and solution throughout all the topics that we have covered in Bhagavad Gita.
Right. It's so amazing. And without this understanding, of course, many people, many devotees just chant, but without understanding this dynamics, if we do it, we don't have that same appreciation, right? Now with this understanding, your Krishna consciousness becomes more channeled, directed, and you can appreciate what you have, and with that, that faith develops in us.
Bro, I have one question, bro. You mentioned about a day, right? It starts with Sattva, Raja, and Tama. When we look at some of the festivals we observe, especially Gaur Purnima and also Narsim Chaturdashi, we usually celebrate that in the evenings. So are festivals and exceptions for all these modes which act in a particular day?
Oh, the action, Krishna conscious festivals, they are beyond the modes. So
Right.
celebrate in the morning or night or afternoon, they're all transcendental completely, because that is direct service to Krishna. They are, and however, people who perform these, they will get they will have different results based on when they actually perform. So it is ideal always to perform in the morning. But what we do here is we start with Mangalarti, right? So we actually celebrate Narasimha Chaturdashi in the morning itself in one way. But more details will be celebrated in the evening. So because it is direct service to Krishna, it is not, it's not being influenced by the modes. And we will have same effect as long as we pursue with the, with the same, like we can be in the lower modes in the evening, but if we pursue with seriousness, we will be transcendental also. Right? We stay in the temple, and serve the Lord, These all transcendental. No, it's not. It's not under the influence of modes. Right.
And Mahaprabhu used to do kirtans in the night in Srivasanga.
Correct. Yeah. So it's always transcendental. But for the lower modes people, those modes will influence very strongly in those times, right? For example, the wine shops and liquor shops will be very busy in the nights, or discotheques. They, the influence, the circumstances will actually harmonize the actions for them.
Also, the other thing is, if we celebrate early in the morning, we will be able to get only few people to
That's the
participate,
main reason we don't do.
right?
Practical reason.
The main objective of us celebrating the festival is to attract people who have not been attracted yet, right? So, and that's possibly the best time for people after work. They can come or at least get some taste or get some prasadam and be able to develop the love for the Lord, right? So, even though it is transcendental in nature, right? It doesn't matter what time we celebrate. Still, it has its potency. But also we have to look at the common man to get into this, right? So.
Yeah, that's very good point. That as Prabhu mentioned, if we keep in the morning, I don't think anybody will be able to come and Abhishek or stay for the Arati, right? That is one primary reason, especially here in Seattle, we celebrate these festivals in the evening, so that everybody can come participate in the festival and have prasadam and participate in kirtan. Thank you, Prabhu.
Also, Prabhuji, if we don't do it in the evening, there are high chances that we'll be involved in something on a lower mode of activity. So at least these festivals will help us, if not transcendence, at least mode of goodness, at least even in the evenings.
That's a very good point too. Yeah, thank you. Now, Sharavana Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So yeah, I was able to relate the learnings today to one of the verses in 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, wherein Krishna says, a person who controls the senses externally, but his mind dwelling on sense objects is called a pretender. So yeah, only by Krishna consciousness, which can transcend all these modes of material nature, one can develop the intelligence. And with the intelligence, he can skillfully make his mind to control all his senses. And that is what we need to do. So in the sense, we need to develop our intelligence, make our mind to control the senses, so that we will not be able to fall down. And for that, we need to do it gradually and thereby transcend the modes of material nature.
Yeah, very good. So to build that inner resistance, we need to pursue seriously Krishna consciousness. And Krishna consciousness is the answer to the modes. Thank you. Shyam Prabhu.
So this chapter actually is a very practical in nature in terms of how we can introspect ourselves to see where we are, in terms of how much progress we make, right? And also gives practical ways how to get steady in the Krishna consciousness. So that's very important. The other thing is, what I was thinking is, how far we have to go. At least I myself have to make progress. How far away I'm from, getting anywhere close to mode of goodness is what is my realization in this chapter. That so much work has to be done for me personally to progress is what is a big takeaway for me. And also think before act is a very important practical way to make progress is what also another thing I took from.
Yeah, very good, Prabhu. Very good points. That's true, actually. Although we think, we are chanting Krishna, we are chanting Hare Krishna and, properly practicing everything, still we have a very long way. Each of us have to think about our own situation and see where we stand. Externally, everything may be all right, but internally, we don't know. Look into our minds and see where we stand. Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that introspection is very important.
Yeah.
Without that, yeah, that's very much true. And each of us have the different sets of problems.
Yes,
We all have
exactly.
to individually work.
Yeah, everyone have different set of problems, different demons acting inside. That's
Don't know what is the pop-up for you. Everybody has their own
yeah.
black holes of material existence.
The common pop-ups are WhatsApp and whatever the other things.
Finally, I deleted my Facebook account a few months back. It's like so much distraction. Every day sometime I'm going there and watching it. And even though I don't send any messages there, I keep watching. WhatsApp, I don't know, because now it became part of our life now. Because
Yeah, that's where I'm sorry. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time. It's just that it distracts all the time, right?
but literally, if you count the number of minutes you look in WhatsApp, it is significant.
Yeah, and it become the problem. The biggest problem is now it's becoming an unavoidable, unnecessary evil now.
Yeah.
There is things that you don't want. You can't just say, okay, I don't want to be in WhatsApp. That's where it is got to, right? Now all the devotee communications are happening through this, which means we have to keep it. But then it is also too much at times. There's way too much going on in WhatsApp. So yeah, it's become a challenge.
So Prabhu, one thing, I was addicted like that with my college friends, and then Jayashri has turned off all the notifications for me. And it has seriously helped, because now I go there only when I literally have some active time to really check that. Otherwise, it is one of those things, right? Without our awareness, it keeps pinging and it just takes our attention away.
Yeah.
So that you could try that.
Doing
anything in and around Krishna consciousness, there are so many different posts, especially on Purushottam and other groups which comes. It's difficult, Prabhu. We are so fortunate that those posts are reaching us. We are reading, we are realizing, we are learning. So I see it more from positive, source, because it's so very difficult in day-to-day life to read all Prabhupada books, but many times such small messages which comes helps you to read, understand, learn faster than what we could have really done.
Yeah, but the fact is, Prabhu, unless we come together, we are all discussing, right? This is the best way to understand these concepts. If we read, right, I mean, it may stick to us, but it is very difficult to translate what we read into action unless we discuss in a group. And so all the theoretical parts we know, but right now what we are doing is also how we implement in our life. So when we do that, only these things really stick. That's my personal observation. I keep reading too many things like you mentioned, right? But many things don't really change my life. It's just like knowledge that sticks in my mind. That's it.
Right.
So with this, now we are distracted from reading time of Srila Prabhupada books, right? Because you read so many messages, you don't have time to read, the same sum of time. If you suppose you pursued your time in a day about say 40 minutes to read your WhatsApp messages. I hope it's not that much. But if you can spend half of that time in reading Prabhupada books, imagine, right? You structurally read every day a particular chapter or a chapter after chapter, it would have more better influence. And read with your family, it has a better influence than directly reading these messages. I don't know. These are all different. Nothing is perfect. It's just my opinion actually.
Also, see there's this email etiquette we had was promoted heavily at work, saying don't hit reply all, right? But unfortunately, that type of etiquette is not being followed in WhatsApp, right? Especially in our Purushottam and all these groups. It's every day birthday wishes, like 1,000 messages, anniversary.
That's right. I agree.
If people want to wish somebody, they can always direct message it. That way, we just don't flood, because sometimes we don't know what is important message, what is not important message, right? I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just sharing my observation, because there are sometimes important messages get lost because of us just flooding this with our wishes. No, there is nothing wrong in wishing anybody. We should, but can we do it in a private message? That way we write it very personally and we
Yeah,
wish,
I agree.
right?
There,
That way,
there are certain things which we want to share with others, like for example,
that we should post it so that everybody, gets that.
some learning or some qualities in a person that we really like or something. The idea of that is sharing. Somebody has some negative quality to negative thinking towards him. By reading this would go away.
Right.
That happens all the time. So yeah, I agree. I mean, there are many messages just saying, happy birthday. There is no need to say that actually. If you have something valued that you want to add, maybe that's that is, I agree that that can be sent in the group so that everybody understands about this person more, and that way takes away any negativities from some hearts, and also appreciation, real appreciation. There are positives and negatives, and it is, again, we cannot change. Even after telling don't send all, people will keep sending.
Yeah, this vaccine controversy. Oh, Krishna.
If you say no, that maybe some people will not be happy with that.
Yeah.
So
That's why I just don't say anything.
best thing is we pursue that Purushottam once in a while, maybe twice a day, after lunch or after dinner, something like that. Those habits, if we cultivate, it will be fine. The other problem is the phone storage, right? Oh God. And after we start using WhatsApp, I realized I don't use much other apps at all. Almost me.
Yeah.
This becomes it's like a black hole of everything. It's like Krishna of mobile phone. And use of other apps is so low compared to this app actually. Yeah. Thank you. And Sujata Radhika, sorry, getting late.
Haribol Prabhu, my realization is that I'm in mode of ignorance. So that realization at the end of the class.
I felt the same when I read it, this chapter again.
You are not
and,
alone.
yes, I mean, it feels like all the message is theoretical. We know we should think before acting, but most of the time, everything happens and then you think, okay, what happened? You're kind of going back and seeing all that stuff. So, and the practical tip is chant Hare Krishna. So let's say if somebody is, let's say if I'm angry with my son, I'm just screaming, I'm not thinking of Hare Krishna, like chant, like I don't know how to apply. I'll maybe pause scolding and then chant. So those are the things I have to see how to apply that.
Yes, practically.
Yeah, like then at the end of the day, they'll say, oh, you're chanting, what's the use? You're just screaming like everybody else. There's no difference. So I don't know at what point we can come to the state that in all conditions, all kind of situations, if I can be calm, think what I should speak, what is right, what is wrong. So that state, hopefully someday it will come. Yeah, we'll pray for that.
So I mentioned one point, right, during the class towards the end. Our urges are still within us. While they are reducing, the urges will once in a while have surges. Surges means up, jump up. They keep popping up. And we tolerate ourselves while going through those influences and hoping that one day through our Krishna consciousness we will overcome them. But I was yesterday I was a little mad with Manjari also. Can you imagine? She's so small, but she annoyed me like anything, and then So it's always going to be there. We have to practice and hope one day we'll get over this. And I felt I could observe myself immediately because I'm preparing for this. Even while preparing for this, I'm having that. So imagine. So material world is like that.
So yeah, yesterday, Prabhu, so I was saying something because I was in a hurry to take care of something else. So he was just keep on asking me why I should do now, why I can't do later. I didn't have patience to explain why, what, how, all these things. I said, well, if I say something, why don't you just listen? Why are you asking me so many questions? So it keep on, and then as if like a saint, he told, I do not respond when you are screaming. And then he walked away. Then I got more angry. Like, so how could he just, as if nothing happened, he walked away? But I am thinking about it for next 1 hour. So the thing is, whenever the person is angry, the other person doesn't care. Their life moves on, whatever they want. But the person who got angry is only affected that why I got angry, why did he behave that, all that. I mean, it comes back only to us. But then I think
anger is like a fireball in your hand.
Mataji, your son is in the mood of goodness. He asked questions.
no, I was upset with him for like talking as if like, oh, I will not respond when you talk to me angry, and then he just walked. They say, what kind of respect you have for me? So, yeah.
The urges have a surge. Yeah, that happens, and over time, hopefully, will slowly improve.
The problem is with the way it all happens is wherever it ticks for us, that is where it gets hit.
Yeah.
Right, that's sweet spot only. Not in every spot we get hit. We hit it only where we our.
Krishna is testing. Are you really out of it or not?
Yeah, and that's the soft spot. When it gets touched, the surge happens. So, so everybody have a different spot, and we all get touched there, and that's where the problem is.
Thank you. Wonderful. Very good realizations by everyone. It's very helpful. We'll end here. Thank you all. See you all.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.